favorite, like, I guess, region or country? Is it I don't even know what the fucking terms are, Bordeaux, whatever. Like, what's your jam?
I think my jam is, I like kind of the underdog wines, I have to say. Like, for me, my jam is like finding awesome Hungarian wine. And also, I think when you travel in those regions, you get so much more personal connection and experience. Like, I was telling one of the wine reps, like, I went to the Louis Roederer in Roms, and they were like, no, we don't give public tours. Get out of here. And, it was really disheartening. And then meanwhile, I accidentally stumbled across, I Googled a winery that I was looking to visit in Tuscany, and accidentally ended up at the house of the winemaker and talked to his father, who didn't speak English, and got a tour of their basement, which used to be the winery production facility, and like welcomed into the house. And when I finally ended up at the winery, I was like, oh, we've spent the morning hanging out with your dad. Like, and having that kind of, connection to the people who make the wine and being able to laugh about it and, break bread together. I think you get a lot more in Italy somewhat, but definitely when you tour wineries in Hungary, in the Balaton region, or in Tokai, or in even lesser known regions like Moldova.
All of these are lesser known to someone like myself. I'm those worldlies, my shoe.
You get like these really cool experiences where you just make like even better stories than, oh yeah, I went on the tour and went through the tour and, tried the wines at the end. And now I know what the non-vintage Moet and Chandon tastes like, from France. So I definitely prefer Italy, but even more so than that, I would say Hungary, and Spain, and you definitely can have some even more unique experiences.
Yeah. And I think Melissa's explanation there about the experience of wine is a great lead-in to kind of how we got into wine as well, because we really believe a lot that wine is about experience. It's more than just a product, more than just grape juice. And so my brother and I are from Illinois. We didn't grow up with wine at all. We were very estranged in our teen years into college and didn't talk to each other for years. My brother was going to school up in Chicago, started off as a stock boy before he was even 21, then a clerk, and then gravitated towards wine. Eventually became a wine buyer for a couple wine shops up in Chicago after about 5 years up there. In the meantime, the Air Force sent me out to Santa Barbara County flying helicopters. And so
that's awesome, by the way.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So I'm flying helicopters by day, going over the vineyards, checking out the terrain, the climate, geography, the weather patterns. And then on the weekends, I'd go visit these wineries, and they tell me about how, the cool foggy air would come in the morning. I'm like, yeah, I know, because I fly in this every day. And I can see the weather patterns in the sky. And so my brother and I both discovered wine independently on our own journey. And we came home one year for Christmas and kind of gave it the typical, hey, brother, what are you up to? Yeah, what are you up to? And found out that we had both discovered wine. And it became this first moment of reconnection with brothers, that we could share a story, share a product. And my brother really gravitated towards wine because of the stories. He wanted to be a novelist. He wanted to be a poet. And so the stories behind wine, the families, their journey, how you got there. It could be anything from 5 generations of Italians making wine to I answered a Craigslist ad. It's a story, and there's a journey that got you to this end destination. And so he'd come out to California. We'd go up to Napa for the weekend on his second visit. He said, I got to make my wine my life. He moved to Napa, and about 6-7 years after that is when we started our first winery out in California.
That's wild, man. That's really cool. So you had zero, it was just you were working in the Air Force and you're like, fuck it. Look at all this stuff. And then you were falling in love with it. Similar to how you were working in, it's just California seems to be the common theme here for how y'all kind of got into the game.
Well, wine can be a very expensive, bougie, high-end product, but it doesn't have to be. And when you're a 22-year-old lieutenant in the Air Force, newly married, and you don't have any money, and you want to figure out what am I going to do for a date day on a Saturday, you go grab a loaf of bread and some spreadable cheese, and you go to a winery, and you spend $15, and you drink and eat. And it was fantastic.
Like what Melissa was doing in France.
What she was doing in France. And that was still available, back 20 years ago. It's a little bit harder today, particularly in regions like Napa, but you can do that here in Denver too. If you go grab a charcuterie board at Carboy or Blanchard and a couple glasses of wine and just have a fantastic afternoon and learn and eat and drink, and that sold it for me.
I love it, guys. I love it. And y'all instill a passion in me. My brother is similar. We have that same kind of relationship, and he's kind of a wine guy as well. Whereas we're just kind of food and booze nuts over here. So we kind of, I feel what y'all are stepping. I smell it.
But yeah, at the same point, I think that's what we try to do in this podcast is show the stories behind. I mean, like, that's why people are so interested in food and chefs. They want to understand, like, how did you get to know this? So it's like kind of the same thing with wine with you all is, Craigslist.
Less romantic. Less romantic.
I love that. Yeah. See, and that one's humanizing as well. So it's, there's y'all all kind of have different paths that led y'all down to this similar, which is a badass route. So it's like you fell in love with wine in different facets or different capacities through different avenues. And so it seems to have kind of, obviously, it's one of those you have a job now that you're passionate about, so it's not like it's not a Joe job like we may have. What's called? Y'all found something y'all like, and y'all are like, fuck it, I'm going to run with this. And y'all seem to all be doing very well. So we do applaud you in that regard. Now, you did mention, that's how, we got to Colorado, or this is how the Colorado scene's booming, or, you're helping grow a local brand. We kind of want to talk, and we've spoken, shout out to our friends Brian and Denise, who have given a shout out to the Colorado wine scene. We'd love to kind of dive into that. We are Colorado centric, so we would love to talk about, what brought you to Colorado, what makes Colorado wine different than California wine, or what makes it different from other New World countries like your New Zealands, your Australias, or even your South Americas. And then I kind of want to know, what do we expect? Like, what do we see? Like, obviously we see a booming, like you mentioned, Melissa, earlier, we have a booming industry of weed and beer, but what do we see coming out of the wine scene for Colorado? Because as we see an influx of people moving here, they're mainly millennials and our generation folks that are spending more money than they're obviously saving, but also spending it on experiences rather than personal objects like a house or a nice dining room table or whatever that may be. Everyone would rather have a good time. So I would love to kind of get what y'all think the dynamic of the Colorado scene is. And I guess we started with Tyzok last time, so it's been a minute. Let's get you back in the ropes here. What do you love about it? What do you see the forecast looking like for 2019 and beyond? And then let's talk favorite things around Colorado.
I was brought out here by an interest in the fact that it's the growing region itself is very, it's young. And it's getting better and better exponentially, the quality of grapes that you see coming out of the likes of Grand Valley and West Elks, the two American viticultural areas of Colorado, both being situated, 4 to 5 hours west of Denver.
Yeah.
Depending on, how heavy your right foot is. But
I don't drive.
And West Elks
is the wine, though. West Elks I don't drive.
West Elks is a unique region because it's one of the highest growing regions in the northern hemisphere. I mean, it's 6,500 feet above sea level. So it's we had the opportunity to work with a grower for our first vintage of grapes in 2017. That we got some Riesling and some Pinot Gris from them. So it's exciting to work with new growers that are passionate about pushing a region, an entire region forward in quality, and to work with. It's a limited number as opposed to a larger number, say in Sonoma or Napa or the likes of an area that is somewhat a lot more populated with people of the same.
Yeah, it seems like it's not necessarily a saturated market, but it's a huge market.
It's a huge market,
yeah,
correct,
and
ever increasing. So.
Yeah, agreed. And so one question I would have in that regard is like, what is there a grape? Like, I think we know that a noir grape is like got a thinner whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Pinot Noir?
Yeah, like
thinner skin.
Thinner skin. Thank you. What kind of grape are we working with? Like, is it the Willamette Valley that we compare our western slope to? What is the comparison that we're working with when we talk about, this uptick in Colorado wines? Is there a certain, like, something's booming, like you hear about these Oregonian noirs, or you hear about a cab like a Camus or a Silver Oak out of your those big mass produced ones. What's the grape that we're looking for in a Colorado wine? Is there something?
Well, it's certainly grower dependent, but we found that Cab Franc, which we're tasting right now, Cab Franc and Tempranillo both grow quite well in the Grand Valley region. And the climate is similar to that of Argentina or Rioja in some respects, and that it's arid.
Like a Malbec-ish? Is that what?
Correct. Yeah, and there's some Malbec that's
nailed it. Yeah,
very good. You know what you're talking about.
No, I don't. Fake it till you make it.
But the issue with Colorado growing is the frost mitigate. Being prepared for frost, the cold snaps that can occur toward the latter part of the growing season. So that's something that's much different in California. That's not something that we were ever concerned with. Frost damaging crop and losing 25, 40, 50% of crop.
How do you deal with that out here?
Wind machines, okay. Creating wind
air,
right. to mitigate that frost and protect, and also using water as a preventative measure. When there's a cold snap. Yeah.
Using water to prevent a frost. That seems counterintuitive, but you would know better than us. This is only my second year here, but to see the manner in which they grow in a manner, at least in part, the majority of the growers who work with, they grow in a manner to protect against, have safeguards for frost, and it was new to me to see that, certainly.
And I think what a lot of people don't realize, and we talk a lot about in our winery, why we don't make Colorado wine yet, is that it takes a long, long time, generations, to figure out what grows in a region and why. Mm-hmm. And we say, can you grow good grapes in Colorado? Yes. We just don't know what yet. Burgundy's been growing Pinot Noir for hundreds and hundreds of years. They know it works there. And again, a lot of people don't realize this timeline from you plant a vine 5-6 years before you get a grape, and then another 2 years for a red wine until you're pouring that wine out of the bottle. And then you want to tweak a little something. I want to change my trellising system. I want to change my irrigation. I want to change my clone. Well, that's another couple of years. And you got to go through these cycles. And how long does it age? So you may be talking, grandchildren are figuring out what grandpa planted and what works out in Colorado. So this doesn't happen overnight. It's not like some of the quick turn cycles you have in, let's say, cannabis or beer, where you're turning a product and a crop over and over and over again.
Quarterly, almost.
Wine is a very slow crop. And so I have no doubt that Colorado will find the grape that is going to be mastered here. They just don't know what it is yet because they haven't had enough time, like some of the old world countries have had, or even California. Prohibition hit a lot of this country hard in a break of winemaking. California generated up more quickly, but some of these other areas, didn't. And so they just don't have the mass of wineries and winemakers to continue to experiment and trial and error and figure out, what works and what doesn't around here, but it'll get there.
Well, and so that kind of makes me want to pick your brain a little bit about that as well. Like, how did you figure out, like, y'all have been very successful with y'all's able to not only export, or is it still exporting if it goes from California just to Colorado? In the words of Seinfeld, importing export. What's it called? But you probably had, different, he says frost, you'll have things like wildfire. And then you had, like, we've spoken with folks in the past, prohibition. They probably ripped y'all's vines down over in California. Like, things, y'all maybe a generation or two ahead. What woes have you seen that maybe Colorado needs to be like, hey, heads up, this may be a real McAsshole in 2 years, or 2 generations. Like, what's the bitch that they haven't figured out yet? That may be a loaded question.
I think where we're coming from as a business is, we don't own vineyard land. Most of the wineries around here don't own vineyard land. They buy grapes from the best sources they can. Both of our wineries source grapes from the best places we can. That may be Colorado, that may be California, that may be somewhere else. For our business model at Sonoma, we try to source the best grapes we can in Sonoma. And I think one of the main reasons behind this is farmers farm, producers produce, sellers sell. And it's very difficult to do all of them. I focus more on the business sales side. Tyzok focuses more on the production side. Neither one of us are farmers. So you have to let the farmers take that time and learn what crops to grow, and then go out and find those best growers, whether it is in West Elk or in Sonoma or Napa, and find those that have spent the generations learning those lessons, and buy the best grapes you can to make the best products. And that gets into, what is a Colorado winery? A lot of the wineries around here, including both of us, make wine from locations outside of Colorado. But we are Colorado wineries. But you find the best input of products you can, and you try to produce the best product for the people here that you can. wherever that comes from. And production here is what makes us a Colorado winery, and having our home here is what makes us a Colorado winery.
Oh, gotcha. So it's not where the grape necessarily comes from. Like technically, if